All right, what's up, guys? Welcome into the second edition of the Bear Report live stream. You guys know us behind the scenes. We're working super hard at Bear Report. My name's Usayd Koshul. I host the Picks for Pace podcast alongside Andrew Freeman. You can follow me on Twitter at Usayd Koshul. You can follow Andrew on Freeman at AJ Freeman25. Our publisher, Zack Pearson, is in the house today. He's the man that makes this whole thing run. You can follow him on Twitter at Zack_Pearson. That's ZACK. What's going on, guys? How we doing?
I'm doing good, man. Glad to be a part of this again tonight. The draft one was really successful that you guys did. So, yeah, I guess this is like an unofficial NFL event. I mean, I guess it's official, but it's kind of like one of those events where the NFL can make a day out of it and then a whole, show on NFL Network and ESPN. So, yeah.
Yeah, doing good. It's nice to, I guess, get a little preview of what's to come, I guess, guys. I mean, we know, about the schedule in terms of who we're playing, weeks in advance, obviously, in terms of, right after the season, basically, you know who you're playing the next season. So, but it's kind of fun to kind of, get to see it in actuality, get to do some predictions, get to see, how it breaks down in terms of who you're playing and when you're playing it. The primetime games, I think, is the big one. Just get a sense of you can kind of plan around that a little bit. And, I mean, it's always fun for those who want to actually go to the games. It allows you to kind of plan it out as well. You can kind of get to see which games you can go to. And, it's a lot of fun there. But, it's interesting because, we'll see. But the Bears do have a tough schedule this year just looking at this thing. So it'll be interesting to get into this and kind of break it down here.
Yeah, I was going to say, right off the bat, probably the first thing we should talk about is this is a brutal schedule. And we know what the schedule is. I mean, you could pretty much tell, 4 to 5 years down the line, you just kind of have to fill in a couple of the puzzle pieces with, what NFC conference you're not playing, how you line up with them. And now that there's an 18-game schedule, how you line up with the AFC. And this year for the Bears, they got the AFC West, so they avoid the Kansas City Chiefs. They avoid the Chargers, who I think are going to be a really good team. And they kind of get a Raiders team that, for me, I think they're kind of the same level with the Bears. They're not like a team that I think, the Bears are automatically going to lose this game, or a team with the Bears are like, okay, I got to chalk this up as a W. But, this schedule is pretty damn tough. And if you look at it, I think it actually sets up pretty well for the Bears in the beginning of the year. You have a Rams game, that's kind of a toss-up for me. It's prime time. I know the Rams have had the Bears number over the last couple of years. But for me, that's kind of a toss-up. The Bengals, the Browns are going to be really good. The Lions and then the Raiders is your first 5. After that, they could be 4-1, 3-2. I think at worst it'd be 3-2 out of that stretch. But then it gets kind of brutal because let's just assume – for everyone's sake here, let's just assume that Aaron Rodgers comes back to the Green Bay Packers because we don't want to speculate anything right now. You have week 6, you have the Packers, then you're at Tampa Bay, you're hosting the 49ers, you're at Pittsburgh before your bye. That's 4 very tough games. And if you don't start off 4-1 in your first 5, you could be looking at below 500 in the bye week.
Yeah, and looking at that second half of the schedule, what I found to be really interesting is that the Bears' last AFC game is actually week 11 against the Baltimore Ravens. And then you look at weeks 12 to 17, weeks 12 to 18 now. It's going to take some time getting used to the fact that we have 18 weeks now, but only 17 games. But weeks 12 to 18, it's all NFC opponents. You have in that stretch, the Lions on Thanksgiving. You have the Cardinals who added J.J. Watt as well as A.J. Green. 2 players that I think when you make those types of moves, you're in Arizona, you're thinking, hey, we could make the leap to Super Bowl contender this year. And then you have the Packers, who are the biggest question mark on the Bears schedule right now, simply because of the Aaron Rodgers drama. Yep. The Vikings, well, you don't know what they're going to look like, but they're going to be competitive because they're coached by Mike Zimmer. The Seahawks have Russell Wilson. The Giants were pretty good last year. It's just the question is going to be, can Daniel Jones be the reason that offense continues to elevate and get better? Because they did add Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay. They're getting back, hopefully, what is expected to be a healthy Saquon Barkley. They have a good wide receiver 3 in Darius Slayton. And then again, you finish it off with the Vikings. So that final 7-week stretch right there, it's going to be really crucial for the Bears because that could ultimately make or break this team's playoff hopes.
Yeah, and I'll mention like the stretch right before their bye week in week 10, which is it's pretty nice. It's right in the middle of the season, which is I think that's pretty nice spot to have your bye week right there. But you look at the the teams that they're playing in that stretch, like right before it and right after. You mentioned the Packers. Who knows with Aaron Rodgers stuff, but assuming Aaron Rodgers is playing for him, which is what I'm doing right now until proven otherwise, that's going to be a tough one, even though it's at home. The Buccaneers, Super Bowl champions, obviously, that's at Tampa Bay. I don't see a situation. I feel like they beat them last year. That was a pretty lucky win for them. Special circumstances being on Thursday night game. I don't think that's a win for them. The 49ers, they're going to be a tough team this year again. So assuming they're healthy, that's the only thing with the 49ers because they've had some injury, bad injury luck over the past few years. But if they're healthy, I mean, that's one of the best rosters in the NFC overall. And then you got the Steelers on Monday night. That's a tough game. We know the Steelers, they have that great defense. We'll see about Big Ben there and how that offense is doing, but that defense is going to be very, very good. We know that for a fact. And then right after the bye week, you have the Ravens and then the Lions on Thanksgiving. So that's just a really tough stretch. And I think the Cardinals are going to be a competitive team as well. So there are no easy weeks in that entire stretch right there. Like Zach kind of said, like they kind of have to get out to a fast start here because if they don't get out to a fast start, that's where things kind of go off the rails. And that kind of makes things interesting because, we talk about the quarterback situation so much. When is Justin Fields going to start in the stretch? Because if we're assuming that Andy Dalton's going to be, playing early on in the schedule here, what does that mean for how they do as a whole? Because, whether Justin Fields ends up being the better quarterback in the end or not this season specifically, remains to be seen. So, how does the quarterback situation affect this as well? That's really going to be a big part of this when we kind of get into that.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the theme of the schedule is pretty much quarterback for the Bears because, like, the first thing you look at outside of, like, the primetime games, and we'll make an exception. I think everyone was looking at the Vegas game because everyone wants to go to Vegas and see the stadium. So that was kind of, one of the things. But outside of that, I mean, you look at, like, this schedule, and let's take out the primetime game. Well, let's actually include the primetime games. It's all about the quarterbacks. You look, okay, week 1, LA Rams, Matthew Stafford, kind of an underrated quarterback over the years. That other primetime game, let's see, was it Pittsburgh in week 9? Ben Roethlisberger, we know what he's done in his career. You look at Green Bay, week 14 on the road. Let's just assume Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. That's another elite quarterback you're going to be taking on. Week 15, Kirk Cousins. I mean, ask Justin Jefferson what his thoughts on Kirk Cousins. And I think you'll get a lot of people's similar thoughts there. And then you look, I mean, even like the afternoon games. I mean, Tom Brady at 325. You have Seattle with Russell Wilson at 305. And then you have, the Raiders with Derek Carr. You don't know what you're going to get. I mean, he's, I don't think we can say he's not an efficient quarterback. I mean, he's pretty solid. He's not, top tier, 1 or 2 for me in the NFL. And then you look at the Bears, and it's essentially, when is Justin Fields going to start? Where can you find the date where we could see him starting? I definitely think it's going to be before week 4, and I think there is a very good possibility. Whatever Matt Nagy says right now, whatever Ryan Pace says, throw it out the window. If Justin Fields comes in, it just blows the door off, training camp and rookie mini camp. I think he's going to be the starter week 1. I think it's a very real possibility.
Fields is interesting, and the schedule is just so odd because there's Bears fans that are like, well, trot him out again in week 1. Just do it that way. Forget Andy Dalton. Forget you ever said Andy Dalton was the starter. Then you look at week 2 against the Bengals. Okay, you could start him at home. Week 3 against the Browns. Are you really going to start him on the road when you have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney and that really good Browns defense? On the other side, okay, could you trot him out week 4 against the Lions? That's probably your best case scenario. Week 5 against Vegas is tough. I will say right now, because the Bears, there's not a stretch where they play like 2 or 3 straight at home. I mean, it's pretty much on the road 1 week, at home the next week. I think they trot Justin Fields out, Zach, like you said, either week 4 or week 6 against Green Bay at home. And I think another thing noting here with the schedules, the last couple of years, the Bears have always gone to Lambeau and played the Packers first. It's actually the opposite this year. They're playing the Packers in week 6 at home first, and then they play Green Bay later on week 14 on Sunday Night Football. And it's interesting because it just seems like every single year you get a Packers primetime game at Lambeau. It is never the Bears hosting the Packers at Soldier Field. I mean, the last time that happened, I think, was the Brian Urlacher Lance Briggs days, which was Monday Night Football when Alex Brown had that big block to send the game to overtime. But I see we've got a comment in the chat here. And if you're watching this on whatever platform, go ahead and project your Bears appropriate comments up, all right, or type them in the chat. We'll project some of them up on screen and discuss them. But I see Chris_Bourbano here says Fields should play when he's ready, regardless of who we're facing. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think if the Bears think they're a playoff team, if they think they're going to go into this year, as a playoff team, and they think that they're going to be better than last season, and Fields is really good in training camp, and he's really good in rookie, mini camp this weekend, I think you have to start him week 1. I don't think you could sit here and say, well, I don't think Ryan Pace Matt Nagy can talk to the media and say, well, Justin Fields had a really good training camp, but we're going to kind of just, put the training wheels on him and let him sit. I don't think there's any way you can do that. I think if he's ready, and everyone will know if he's ready or not. The locker room, listen to the players during training camp, listen to them after preseason games. They're going to tell you if they're talking about him in a way, you're going to know that he's ready to go in week 1. Is that guaranteed for him to start week 1? I don't think it's a guarantee. I do think the Bears could go with Andy Dalton, especially if Fields is still a little, struggling and still coming along in training camp. But if he just comes out and is just on fire in training camp and just blowing people away, especially preseason, I think he'll start week 1.
Yeah, I think if it's close, you have to give it to Fields in the competition sort of things, because this entire team's focus has to be about Justin Fields. Like, nothing else matters at this point. Like, his development is priority 1, 2, and 3, basically, this entire the food chain here. Say what you want about the defense or getting some of these other players developed. Like, Justin Fields is what is important here, because if he hits, I mean, that changes everything for this franchise. So they have to do whatever they can to develop him, and the best way to develop a quarterback is to get him on the field and see what he's got. There are some things where he just isn't ready with the playbook and the terminology. Then, I understand sitting him there, but if he's ready to go, he's up to speed on that stuff. He looks good in practice. It looks like the mental side of things in terms of picking up the playbook and all that stuff is fine. Getting plays into the line of scrimmage and whatnot is fine. Then let him go out there and see what he's got. I think that's the best way to go about it. And could they still have if Andy Dalton's really good in training camp as well? Could they still roll him out there for the first couple of weeks to see what he's got? That could be the case as well. I kind of made a joke on Twitter the other day when we found out that the Rams were playing the Bears week 1. Let Andy Dalton be like the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, for that week 1 game, because going up against Aaron Donald in your first NFL start is pretty tough, especially if you're a quarterback like Justin Fields. He likes to hold on to the ball quite a bit, and that's probably going to be an issue for him early on in his career, to be quite honest. But yeah, you could probably let him get away with that there. But I mean, it's very likely that they're going to start this season 1-2, because I just think the Rams are a better team. I think the Browns are a much better team. The Browns might have the best roster in the NFL outside of quarterback. So that's just a really tough game for them in general. So it's really shaping up. If Justin Fields doesn't win the job outright before week 1, and he's not the starter week 1, I think week 4 is the latest, because I think that's a good situation to put him in there, because you got the Lions right there. I mean, they're a rebuilding team. They don't have a good defense. Their secondary isn't very good. So it's a depleted unit in terms of overall talent on that side of the ball. So that would be a good spot, I think, to put him in there if you do not start him to start up the season. But if he's awesome in training camp, there's no way you sit in for Justin Fields. I mean, for Andy Dalton, because you're losing the respect of everyone in that locker room, I think, because you look at this team, they're a veteran team. I think is the one thing that we're kind of overlooking here. This is an old, aging roster around Justin Fields. So how are these guys going to look at it? Like Khalil Mack's on defense, Akeem Hicks going to his final year of his contract on that defensive side of the ball. Some of these other guys, Dan Trevathan getting up there in age. How are some of these guys who are leaders in the locker room, by the way, going to view this when Justin Fields looks like the guy in training camp and the coaching staff goes with Andy Dalton just because, we signed him to this amount of money. We don't want to waste that money, early in the season. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for the team. And what's best for the team, if Justin Fields is ready, is to get him on the field and let him play.
Yeah, and if you go back and you watch the post-draft presser that took place about 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night, what had happened is Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace consistently alluded to, well, we're going to follow the Kansas City model. We're going to follow the Kansas City model because Nagy was there the year that they drafted Patrick Mahomes, and he sat for all 15 games, actually. But what Nagy also said, and a lot of people didn't seem to catch this, was that it's not going to be an exact carbon copy of the Kansas City model. There are going to be things that are different because every single team, every situation is different. And the Bears are in a different situation here because you would need Alex Smith, I think, had a near MVP type season that year.
He was good. He was really good that year.
Right. So you're going to need to get that out of Andy Dalton to really justify holding off Justin Fields. It's not the same situation. I think the Bears are going to play Fields much sooner than a lot of people think, but just that comment from Nagy and then dropping that tidbit in there, hey, listen, it's not going to be the exact same model or blueprint. It's not going to be a carbon copy. That really sticks out to me there because you can bet right now that the Bears already know when they're going to play Justin Fields, and all the mayhem this offseason has been, well, Andy Dalton's going to be the starter. The Bears have said Dalton's going to be the starter. We've been here before. They haven't said how long he's going to be the starter for. That's also another really key component to keep in mind.
Go ahead, Zach.
Sorry. He's a starter right now because, they haven't been on the field or anything yet. This is their first time on the field this offseason is going to be this weekend. I think a lot of people are going to be in the end, I think Fields is going to win this quarterback battle.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Justin Fields, he's a lot more ready than people think. Because I think what Mahomes was, we talk about that Kansas City model. Mahomes was a complete project. People forget coming out as a rookie out of Texas Tech because, he went to that, air raid offense under Cliff Kingsbury. Just had a lot of work to do with his mechanics and all that stuff, decision-making. Played in a very non-traditional offense. He had a non-traditional playing style at Texas Tech, so there was a lot to kind of work with him there. Justin Fields, he's played in a offense that kind of suits well with under Ryan Day to the pro game, so he's already has an understanding of what to do at the NFL level, basically. It's just a matter of, can he pick up the playbook fast enough and can he, get his processing speed up to the NFL level quick enough to where he is ready to go. That's really the big thing with Justin Fields here. So even with the Kansas City model, you can also say from the point of the Kansas City Chiefs there, did they end up, was it a bad idea to kind of have that Kansas City model? Because even though Alex Smith played great that year for his standards, he was a very good quarterback that year, you look at their offense in the middle of the year there, it did struggle in Kansas City when you look at that season in 2017. So they did had their struggles that year. And you kind of have to wonder with how great Mahomes was in his first year as a starter in 2018, did they kind of waste a year of Mahomes sitting him on the bench for a year and not putting him out there and seeing what he could do? So that's kind of something you have to consider there as well. And also Alex Smith, he was in that system for 4 years. He had a repertoire with the coaching staff and the players around him. So it's a little bit of a different situation than with Andy Dalton, bringing him in on a 1 year mercenary contract. And, he's kind of the starter by default just because, he was the best option at the time in the offseason. A little bit of a different situation there. So I don't think they're comparable, too much. There are a lot of different factors here. Ultimately, it's going to be about who establishes themselves in camp and who wins the job there. And then at some point, Justin Fields is going to get on the field. It's just a matter of when.
And that's the exciting part about this upcoming season. It's we want the Bears to make the playoffs. We also want them to make a run. If they don't, and Justin Fields actually plays well, you still have that in your back pocket, that kind of hope we really haven't had, honestly, since 2017. Even, Trubisky wasn't great in 2017. We still had kind of that hope that maybe he could be a good quarterback. Some things about the schedule, and, I think you guys noticed these things as well. You said it first earlier. This is crazy. This is the first time the Bears have never had a stretch of back-to-back home games or back-to-back road games. It's literally every other game. It's road or away. I don't know if any other team has that. I haven't really been on Twitter to check or haven't looked at another schedule to check. I think I saw something that one or two more teams might have that. That's just crazy though, that it's literally every other game is home or away. And I don't know how that's going to really impact the Bears in terms of travel. Typically guys, they like to kind of have the back-to-back home games because it can stay in their, homes for, 14 days at a time, sometimes more. Compared to the road, you're on the road and then you're still on the road. You come back if you have back-to-back games. But that was kind of one thing that stood out to me. Another thing that kind of stood out to me, obviously the Vegas game is the big one because everyone wants to travel there. They have some fun road games though, like LA. In week 1, it's going to be incredibly warm there, beautiful, time there. But like going to Cleveland, they don't have to play in that nasty weather, towards December, November. They kind of got an early September game. The other one, what's the other one? At Seattle might be kind of a mess the day after Christmas. The Giants is going to be at home, and then, Minnesota on the road. But yeah, I was just kind of looking at the schedule and just kind of noticing, that they have the every other game type scenario here, the Vegas game. And then the other thing I wanted to get your guys' opinion on, did you like how they released it better this year or last year? Because how they released it with that video last year, I love that beat and that song, but oh my God, that was awful. Like watching them pull up to the bus and that was just brutal.
I mean, so I didn't watch the Benjamin Moore video. I will go back and actually watch that.
Not very good. No offense to anyone that's in that. Not very good.
Yeah, like I said, I have not seen the video yet. I will go back and watch it. Maybe just quote, tweet, and comment. I'll throw my opinion up on Twitter. But I will say this, man, this little graphic that they that the Bears tweeted at 6:45, so about an hour ago, that you see up on screen, it's honestly not as bad as people think. It's just, paint splattered all over the place, but you had to get the sponsor in there or the partnership with Benjamin Moore. But yeah, this one, I like the way aesthetically this graphic's pleasing. What do you think, Andrew?
I mean, I prefer it over a video, to be honest, because I mean, it's just a schedule, at least in terms of things to hype up here. Hyping up the schedule in terms of the off-season period is kind of like lower on the totem pole compared to the draft, free agency, all this other stuff here. So short and simple to the point for releasing that there. I mean, the graphic is whatever. But I mean, it gets right to the point. You get the schedule. Some of the things, just speaking about the schedule in general, I kind of like how they can maintain 3 traditions that we've seen over the past few years. Vikings in the last week of the season at Minnesota. That's for whatever reason, they love scheduling that for the Bears.
Or week 6. Was it week 15 last year too? It was towards the end of last year.
I think it was the last week of the season.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it was.
Wait, Green Bay was last week.
Oh yeah.
But it was the week before, 2 weeks before. It was still
right
at the end of the year.
Still late. Yeah. But that was I think in 18 that was the case, in 17 that was the case. So they had that tradition back here. And then for whatever reason, the NFL loves scheduling Bears and Rams in primetime for some reason. I don't get that because I mean they must be getting really good ratings from those 2 big markets there because if you look at the actual games themselves, they're awful games. I just say objectively here, taking the fan bias out of it, they're legitimately hard games to watch over the past 3 years. So the fact that they're willing to go to that again is just interesting to me, especially on week 1 of the season. Nonetheless, what are you expecting there? To be honest, and then Packers at Lambeau, Usayd kind of mentioned it there. That's for whatever reason they don't want to give it to us on Soldier Field. So I mean, the last time it happened was that awful game in 2019 week 1. So. To be honest, I don't really mind that, I guess, because the Packers will probably, if Aaron Rodgers is playing, probably not going to be a fun night for the Bears in that case.
Well, and Pittsburgh, too, the last 2 times the Bears have played at Pittsburgh have been primetime games, including this year, because they've had, Sunday Night Football it would have been 2013, I want to say. They were at Pittsburgh, and then the year before that, they were they've not been in prime time. It's been afternoon too, 3:05, 3:05, or 3:25 starts as well. So yeah, they like to, for whatever reason, put the Bears and Steelers kind of opposite of that noon. I guess 2017 they play at noon, but I mean, I want to say 4 of the last 5 games have been either 3:05, 3:25, or 7:05 games with Pittsburgh.
sticking with the Steelers here, the Bears have actually won the last 3 games against Pittsburgh because in 2009 I remember that day because it was the Jay Cutler at home debut game.
Yeah, first one.
Where it was raining. It was second week. The Bears won 17-13. And then you had that shootout that took place during the third game of the Trustman era in 2013. Yeah, that was really good. And then that was when Cutler kind of went on that fourth quarter tear and he got the nickname Mr. Comeback or Mr. Clutch, whatever it was. But then you also look at the Ravens game at Soldier Field. I mean, the last time the Bears played the Ravens at Soldier Field, the game lasted like 6 or 7 hours because there was that brutal thunderstorm that happened. And then go back to 2017. I mean, the Bears absolutely dominate. The Bears went 4-0 against the AFC North in 2017 because they went to overtime against Baltimore. They beat Cincinnati. They beat the Browns at home on a snowy day when Trubisky did the snow angel thing. And then they went to overtime against Pittsburgh as well. And I think this year it's very likely that there is a serious case you could make that the Bears could possibly go like 3-1 against the AFC North. I mean, Big Ben's completely breaking down. We don't know what the Ravens are going to be really good. It's just going to be a question of, hey, can Lamar Jackson actually can he develop as a passer? Because they did add, I believe it's Rashad Bateman or Rondale Moore this year. And then in the draft, and then the Browns, you really don't know. Were they just the team that was a 1-year wonder last year with a good defense? Or is Baker Mayfield ready to take the next step? And then you just have no idea with the Bengals because they did draft they drafted Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. So you invested in a really good player at the expense of a really good player, at the expense of your quarterback in Joe Burrow, who's coming off a torn ACL.
I think the Bears actually, I might be wrong on this. I think they've won 8 straight against the AFC North. I think 2013 they swept them too. I could be wrong because I remember they beat Cincinnati at home. That was to open the year, wasn't it?
I think they did sweep them that year. Yeah,
I think they swept them that year.
Because they beat the Browns in the first week. Jay Cutler got injured, then he came back to beat the Browns. I think
that's right. Yeah, it was on the road. I was at that game. It was like freezing cold.
Oh, I'm sure that's probably not the.
It was awful.
I'm sure Cleveland weather during that time was just not fun at all. It's kind of like Chicago weather, probably just not great, especially the lakefront right there. But I would say they beat the Bengals week 1. They beat the Steelers in that shootout, and then the Ravens one was just weird.
Yeah, the Ravens one was like the tornado warning.
Yeah. 2017 was a weird one too because you had like the Pittsburgh game where Mike Glennon was starting and they basically had to ride Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen basically had to carry them to that win basically, literally. And then the Ravens one was a weird one too, that comeback win or Trubisky coming in with the big throw at the end there. So a bunch of weird. 2017 was a weird year for that offense. I mean, do you have the game where Trubisky threw 7 passes against Carolina?
And they won because Eddie Jackson had 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, not a fun team to watch, just overall. But I guess I'll be the pessimistic one on how I see them against the AFC North because I think the AFC North could be one of the best divisions in the NFL this year. I'm very high on Joe Burrow with the Bengals. I have the Bears winning that game, but that's going to be a tougher one than people think because I think Joe Burrow is the real deal. And, their offense, they gave him receivers to work with there, and we'll see what their defense is. It's going to come down to their defense. Can they be an efficient unit there? But I like their chance against the Steelers, actually, because even though the Steelers are great on defense as well, that offense is just brutal. They might have the worst offensive line in football. And if you're looking at this thing from a matchup perspective, the Bears, the strength of their defense is their front 7. So, and I don't trust Ben Roethlisberger at this stage of his career to win the games with his right arm. So, I kind of like them there, but it's kind of a toss up to me. The Ravens, I just think they're really good. I have a hard time seeing them winning that game. And then the Browns, like I said before, they have the best roster in football. So, I think best case scenario, the Bears can go 2-2 in that division. It's probably looking more like 1-3 if we're being realistic here, but I think 2-2 is a realistic goal when facing that division.
Before we kind of wrap things up here, we have to talk about the preseason schedule because we have a Mitch Trubisky revenge game.
Ooh, yeah, here we go.
So the Bears are playing the Bills, the Titans, and Dolphins. I believe they open with the Dolphins. They open with the Dolphins. They host the Dolphins. They host the Bills in week 2, and then they travel to Tennessee, I want to say, on the 28th and play the Titans to kind of end preseason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to get a Mitch Trubisky. I mean, Mitch Trubisky's playing that game, barring any injury. So we're going to get a Mitch Trubisky. And the Bills play the NFC North. I believe they play the Packers, Bears, and I want to say it's the Lions or Vikings. They play one of those two teams. So, yeah, we'll be getting some another dose of Mitch Trubisky. But kind of wrapping things up, I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Let's do a little bit where we make our early predictions, because a lot of things are going to change between now and week 1. But let's do a prediction and then kind of the game you're looking forward to the most on the schedule.
My prediction is not going to be 8-8. It's going to be 9-8. I think when you look at the Bears, you look at just the state of the roster in general. I mean, let's be honest. The only thing that's provided hope this year is Justin Fields. Now, or that is going to continue to provide hope is Justin Fields. When you move on from an all-pro cornerback like Kyle Fuller, I think your defense does take some steps back. Now, I really do think highly of Sean Desai, but I just think overall the defense is going to take a step back because they invested into the offense this year with this draft class at the expense of the defense, as well as some of the other offensive free agent signings. But I'm going to say 9-8. I mean, look, it's so tough because you're also playing the last 3 NFC champions in Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, and San Francisco. I mean, some of your most winnable games are going to be the Lions. The Lions, that's 2 wins right there. I think the Vikings, the Bears might actually sweep them. That's 4 wins right there. Sprinkle in, let's just say, a 5th win against the Raiders. You're going to have, and then those other 4 wins that I have the Bears getting, I mean, that's going to be, those are going to be honestly total toss-ups, because you can make an argument that they beat the Bengals. Well, for me, that puts you at 6 wins. Do you squeeze 1 or 2 wins out against Green Bay, depending on what happens with the Aaron Rodgers saga? Absolutely. And then, there's going to be a couple times here the Bears upset some teams. And I think the biggest upset right now that could take place for the Bears is honestly that week 16 game against Seattle. I know everyone's continuing to count the Bears out of a lot of these games, but hey, there's some upset potential here. But it's going to take a lot of things. A lot of dominoes are going to have to fall the Bears' way for them to truly get to 8 or 9 wins this year. But I'm going to say 9-8 because I just have a feeling the Bears are going to get luckier than most people think this year.
Yeah, I'll kind of answer a little bit differently. I'll start off saying the range I think is reasonable. I think for the Bears, win-wise. So I think the low end worst case scenario is probably looking at 6 wins here, just because I think the Bears do have a stout enough team as a whole, and I think they're better at the quarterback position overall. So I think their floor is a bit higher than a lot of people maybe think it will be, but this isn't a team that has a really high ceiling right now. I think their defense is going to be a little bit worse than people may want to think it is, because that secondary is a huge question mark. There's rumors that they might be interested in signing Steven Nelson. That might change things a lot because he's a very quality corner. But until they make a move there, that secondary is just not. It's Eddie Jackson. Maybe Jalen Johnson develops, but there's nothing else there in that secondary. I have very little confidence in it. So I think 6 to 10 wins is probably the most realistic range you can think of. 10 wins, best case scenario. It's a tough schedule, so it would be very tough to get to that 10 wins. But I'll just kind of quickly run down the schedule here and how I think it'll turn out. I'm kind of going with a little bit of an optimistic approach here. I think they'll lose week 1 to the Rams. At LA with Stafford there in that offense, I just don't see them being able to hold up and matching them point for point. I think they will beat the Bengals in a sneaky tough game in week 2, just because they're at home, home opener. I think they'll win that game there. They're kind of comparable in terms of talent. I think overall, I think they're going to lose to the Browns. That might be an ugly one, just because the Browns they're loaded, man. They're so good this year. I think week 4 that might be Justin Fields' opener. We'll see against the Lions. I think they're going to win that game. I think they're going to win against the Raiders too in week 5. But that's my first really toss up one against the Raiders, because it's at Las Vegas. The Raiders are kind of like a polar opposite of the Bears, where they have this humming offense. They have a good offense, but their defense has just been atrocious over the years. So they're kind of like polar opposites as teams. I think they'll beat the Packers at least once. Maybe it's at home in week 6. We'll see there. But week 7, 8 against the Bucks and 49ers, I don't see them winning those games. I think they'll beat the Steelers, but that's a toss-up as well. And then Ravens, I just don't see them winning that one off the bye week. The Lions game on Thanksgiving, I think they beat the Lions twice this year. I just think the Lions are just not going to be a good team, just in general, even though division games are usually a toss-up. The Cardinals game, definitely a toss-up. I think they're very comparable teams, but I think the Bears will win at home. Then we got Packers at Lambeau Field. That's a loss for me. The Vikings at the Bears, that's a win for me. Kind of going back and forth here. The Seahawks, I don't see them beating. The Vikings, I don't see them beating Week 18. And then the last game I'll talk about here, Week 17, the Giants is going to be an interesting one because I think we had a comment kind of mentioned this earlier. But the Giants, you mentioned their skill positions being really good. Their entire team is like really, really good. If you look at the Giants here, just a matter of like, is Daniel Jones like any good, basically, is what it comes down to. If Daniel Jones is like somewhat decent, the Giants are going to be a really good team because they have weapons on offense. You know, with Saquon Barkley coming back, they got Kenny Galladay in the offseason. And that defense, I think, is going to take a huge step this year. I think they overachieved last year with that defense. They added some talent to that secondary there. So I'm really excited to see what the Giants do this year. So I have them winning that game right now, the Bears, but it's going to be a toss-up for me. That could go either way for me. So overall, it's a 9-8 record, same as Usayd. But again, I could see them easily like going 6 wins, 6-11, or winning 10 games here. It's just a matter, you know, of how the ball kind of bounces for them, then injuries as well to keep in mind there.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. I'm in the range of 8-9, 9-8, and I know that's kind of taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
But I just think they're like they can't be 500 this year unless they tie, essentially. But I think they're pretty much a 500 team because you know I do think it all depends on Justin Fields and if the defense can get to that next level, what they're going to do in the secondary. Because, I mean, the loss of Kyle Fuller is going to be huge. They're going up against some pretty damn good wide receivers this year. So looking at the schedule for me, I think that for those first 5 games, I'll say they're going to go 4-1. I think they're going to upset the Rams. I think they could start off 2-1, beat the Lions, beat the Raiders.
Okay.
But from there, it gets rocky. Green Bay, Tampa Bay, and this is with Aaron Rodgers playing. Green Bay, Tampa Bay, 49ers, I think those will be 3 losses. And I think the Bears will kind of be sitting there. Well, they'll put them 4-4. And that Pittsburgh game, going to the bye, that really could define their season. They come out with a win, and then they're 5-4. There's some very winnable games left in the final, stretch there. They lose that game and go to 4-5. You're looking at maybe 4-6 at the Ravens. I think they'll beat Detroit on Thanksgiving. I think, the Cardinals for me, like you, Andrew, it's a toss-up. I think, this is one of those situations where the Bears are going to either lose a string of games or they're going to win a string of games, 2 or 3 in a row. And it's going to be determined by that Steelers game and that bye week. Green Bay output as a loss. Minnesota, I think they'll win that one on Monday night. Man, Seattle, it's always tough playing there, and it's tougher now with the fans returning.
Yeah, it's another thing to factor in. Yeah.
Yep, that place is going to be hyped up because we could see a scenario where the Bears and Seahawks might be fighting for that 7th or in the hunt graphic for that 7th wild card spot. And then the Giants, I'll say the Bears are going to win that one. I think it'll be closer than many people think. And, the Vikings, it's going to be another tough one, I think, at the end of the year. So I got them at 8-9, 9-8. I know it's kind of taking the easy way out, but I just think that's what they are. I think they're a 500 team in a non-500 possible schedule because of the 17 games. So, but the game I'm really looking forward to, I really want to see that Cleveland game because I think I'm with you, Andrew. I think Cleveland could be a really damn good team this year. And if Baker Mayfield takes that next step, I think it's Kansas City, it's Buffalo and Cleveland right there with them. Cleveland's going to be a fun one. And I think the Bears are kind of dodging a bullet with the weather not being too bad, but, we'll see. Cleveland's also, they have Odell. Odell could go off at any time, change a game for good or for worse. I mean, he could go out there and put up 200 receiving yards, or he could go out there and just totally sabotage the entire damn game for the Browns. So I think there'll be a good early season test for the Bears. And will we see Justin Fields? It's in Ohio. It's where he went to college. So we'll see. But, also the other game, obviously, we've said it multiple times, the Raiders game. I think that's going to be a blast for Bears fans. I suggest if anyone's planning on going to the game, get your tickets now because the prices The secondary market are insane. And it's going to be like that for every Raiders game because they're opening up that new stadium. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I think that'll wrap things up, guys. As always, you can follow the Bear Report on Twitter at just Bear Report. You can follow Picks for Pace on Twitter at Picks for Pace. Please rate, review, subscribe on all major podcasting platforms. You just do it once and it shows up for both shows. You could follow me on Twitter at Zack, ZACK_Pearson, and then I'll let you guys sign off with your Twitter.
Yeah, guys, so you can follow me on pretty much any social media platform. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Usayd Koshul. Check out my work on the Bear Report as well. Gonna have a lot of articles coming out this summer between May and June when traffic or just Bears news in general is going to be so slow. I'm going to be doing a breakout Bears series, a bounce back candidate series, and then a series breaking down players that are on the Bears roster bubble. So keep an eye out for all that stuff.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at AJFreeman25. I'm over at the Bear Report. At the off season, we're kind of entering that slow period, so I'm hoping to get some video breakdowns for this rookie class coming in soon. For anyone that follows my work on the Bear Report YouTube channel, Justin Fields will be first. We'll see when that is. Still getting a lot of stuff together for that, but hoping to get him and Tevin Jenkins will be the two big ones. So keep an eye out for that this summer. Those are kind of be the big projects on my end during this summer period, and then once the season starts up in August, late summer area, that's where the fun begins for this Bears season.
Yeah, and until next time, everyone, please stay safe.